It looks as if our first job when we got to Ireland was to go across and examine the prospects of this, I'm not sure, I think it's a spring. There's a statue there of the Virgin Mary, and not far away my car appears to be parked outside the Irish caving headquarters. That covers Northern South Ireland. Two vans which carried the rest of the party from Belfast. It's a rather grand building. At that time it probably needed a little refurbishment. It looks rather as if I wasn't going to travel with the rest, but the reason was quite a mundane one. I had to be back a day early due to probably lack of planning on my part. Appears to have been a break for a meal before we went, or a bit of fettling of one sort or another, before we went into St. Augustine's cave. It's a small cave. Immediately the entrance to one of the larger of the three parts is immediately at the side of the road. So that was very convenient to get the gear in, including a rubber dinghy. The rubber dinghy would, in theory, take us through the cave, floating it all the way, but the water level was rather low and a bit of carrying was needed. I was going to travel in state with my tripod and my camera and the 4-light unit and batteries in the boat. And Randy Coe would at some point in the film give us a demonstration on how to roll a dinghy if it capsizes. It's just a bit unfortunate the water wasn't really deep enough, but we got some idea of what he was after. St. Augustine's Cave, I don't think it's much over 200 yards long, and it's got its name because the seminary almost above the cave is dedicated to St. Augustine. The young lads in the seminary, they used to have quite a harmless initiation ceremony by which they would swim, if the water was deep enough, through their cave from daylight to daylight, wearing just a pair of underpants. There's obviously quite a bit of a way to carry the boat before we could even float it. I think this is probably about the point where the intention was to hand over to me. But I must be taking it a bit further. Somebody had spotted a very large spider and thought that should be photographed. The dinghy would appear to be well and truly on sale now, but I must be carrying my gear. I think I decided that when the water was deep enough, somehow or other I would get in without tipping it up, and they would steady it all through the cave. Some quite nice bits to traverse on, and actually rather fine formations, so perhaps one shouldn't do that, certainly not in nail boots. If you think about it, it wouldn't make a bad show cave. Perhaps someone will do that sometime in the future. So many of the party had set aside that afternoon out of pure kindness, I suppose, in a way, but they wanted to make as good an effort as they could. And largely that was dependent upon me, the camera, and the light, of which I was in all control except for the boat. It seemed to be quite a considerable distance, but I suppose if you're floating along like that, and it's a 200-yard long cave, it will take a little while before you see daylight again. At various points I had to carry the boat across. I think there's a word for that, but I can't. Porterage, I believe. I may be wrong. Looks as if we might have been carrying the boat more than we rode in it. You're really getting something like a ride in a ghost train, where you get tableaus along the way. I think this was made up more or less a decent length of entertaining film. Randy Coe didn't waste any time with his rolling the boat demonstration. I think we've run aground again. Looking at this, I'm rather surprised at how well the batteries must have held out. Just long enough by the look of it. Apart from this, this was my only underground bit of film made on the trip. But there was quite a lot of nice surface scenery to photograph later on. And whilst we were staying at the hotel in Manor Hamilton, we were only about 10 or 12 miles from the centre of activities for the following day. And that was a larger part of the party intended visiting Dermot and Granier's cave, which is way above the valley of Glenif, and not all that far away where we were planning to go to investigate John Batty's long-forgotten discovery, where he'd been down 12 years before and decided, after a 12-year delay, that it was worth returning. Certainly, it was a place with prospects, and their only difficulty was getting past a large boulder at the bottom. I think that's Tony Wilson, but whether he was sporting a beard at that time, certainly Randall Coe had a very luxuriant moustache. We reached daylight, and I'll try and pick out our members of the party that I can still remember. I drifted a little way away from the recorder there, and I hope the tape has picked up my voice. Randy Coe on the right, chap in the middle, I should know his name, but I don't, and somewhere or other, oh, there's Don Miller, many of whom may remember him. Very active member of the club at that time, and club librarian for a number of years. There's Randy again, showing off his moustache. The way back to the car involved going along the stream for some distance, and then just climbing up the side, and by means of a path which someone obviously knew will lead you back to the road and down to the entrance of the cave. Obviously they hadn't had enough of getting wet, and you can't really say if you've been through St Augustine's cave that you need to wash the mud off your overalls, because that's already done it for you. Now on this occasion we were visiting the varieties mine. We're nearby is varieties pot, John Batty's discovery of 12 years previous. We're above the valley of Glenif, And at some point, I remember, as we were climbing up with our heavy rucksacks, someone mentioned that probably John Batty, on a previous occasion, they'd been able to send their rucksacks, if not anything else, up on the overhead railway. I think this part of the the original Glenif mine had been closed, but I believe they'd opened up another one further up on the plateau. Well engineered path, really. Easiest way of climbing up 1,000 feet, I suppose, that could be. I might not think so now, though. They haven't got there quite, but not far off the top, I believe. Can't be very far off the mine now. I think this is Don Miller just coming into view. And John Batty not far behind. He looks to have got the biggest pack of the lot. I knew I wouldn't have an opportunity to go down the hole, so I very sensibly left my potholing gear in the car. Just a quick look round now that we've arrived. Not all that far to the west of us. The rest of the party were investigating Dermot and Granier's cave. Rather a wonderful place. You can't be in two places at once,